everyone. So it's June 18th. Happy Father's Day. I was actually just sitting here meditating to get ready to do a pick a flower reading, and I felt like, and hanging out with my homegirls, right? Actually, I was not hanging out with anyone. I was just meditating and stuff, and I feel like I need to just do that continuation of that other video I have where it was basically me saying like, I've been wondering why lately, whatever. And so it kind of goes over the concept of narrow-mindedness or narrow vision, and what I have to say about that, which is basically when I say that I never felt like I died before, what essentially I mean is like whenever I observe, like, it's almost like, okay, so like whenever I'm just like out and about in regular life, right? Like I feel like me. I feel like I feel like a BERRA. I feel like I'm part of this world, right? Like just a regular person feeling. I'm not sure how to really describe it. I just feel normal, like what I assume everyone feels like. Okay, when I go into meditation, or I go, if I am communicating, it depends, okay? Sometimes when I'm communicating with passed away loved ones, or I'm communicating with guides, there's some times where I feel like myself looking up or looking around or looking beyond, like beyond the scope of this vision, right? To that other plane, these other realities, or just, it depends, okay? But essentially, I can feel like the cord of our being. If I don't even have to necessarily concentrate, but sometimes it does have to be intentional, where I feel the cord of our being that goes to our purest form, our soul. That is our soul. We are these pure souls. And in essence, we are a product of God, but we are God. We are part of God. We're already complete, we're already whole, we're already balanced. And yet the further down the awareness is, the more fractured we become, in essence of vision. We'll just use some sort of vision where it becomes an identity, fractured identities. And so the narrow-mindedness of who we are in this reality is us identifying. We have to be narrow-minded to begin with in order to exist in this way that we perceive ourselves to exist. To be here means to be narrow-minded. And so because we're having to be able to envision this, to experience this, to be here, to be present in the moment, right? To kind of carry on other people's burdens, that means that we're being more narrow-minded. The more we identify with our identity here, the more narrow-minded we are, the more happy we are. Like, for better or for worse, we are narrow-minded to varying degrees. And even when we reach beyond the scope of this, we can only reach so much, right? Because we are still envisioning this reality. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, okay, scribbling. Okay, so when I talk about, they're showing me the example. Okay, so you know how I talked about how I broke my hip, which has been irritating me lately, and when it irritates me, it brings me into the awareness of that experience and like how that cultivated who I am, right? And so when I was talking about that individual who helped me during that car accident, you see how like their positive experience kind of shaped my reality moving forward. Imagine if it was someone who was not calm, who was not someone who deals with that kind of stuff on a day-to-day basis, and they're just like scrambling and being chaotic, right? Then that could essentially completely transform my life, or potentially my, not necessarily my destiny, but my choices. It kind of shapes my reality moving forward based on that experience. One moment. Okay, I don't know why they're using that example other than to just, ow, rip my ear, other than to just bring that up, as like, you see how the more that we interact with others, the more narrow we become, because that kind of creates our identity. So I think that's a lot of, oftentimes when people go on spiritual retreats to God knows where they go, right? I'm not talking about like a retreat with other people. They just disappear off into the woods or something. They're isolating themselves away from those identities. And it doesn't necessarily have to be intentional, in the sense that they're basically cutting themselves off from not just people and those experiences, but even the things that they used for basic survival. Like, they're not identifying with that, right? Okay. Anyway, so basically, like, when I go, it's like this feeling of being like up looking down, and I'm not me. I'm not, I mean, I'm obviously me, but I'm not even my experiences. I'm not my experiences. I'm not, like, it's like it's this disassociated feeling, or I'm just like observing. I'm just observing the world. And it's like completely detached from emotions, good or bad. It's just observing. I just am. And if I were to associate a feeling with it, it would be love. It would be complete acceptance of what is. There's no feeling of, like, it's just accepting what is, irregardless of, like, the more pinpoint, you know, it's like the more focused you become, the more narrow you become on an experience or what's happening. It's just is. Okay. So I've always felt that, like, even as a baby. And so when I was talking about how I would be so grateful to be here in this world, it was me becoming more narrow. It was me starting to see the world as a human being. And so the more, it's like me looking up instead of up looking down. So the more I identify with me and everything surrounding me, the more that this becomes my reality, and I observe from this perspective rather than that perspective towards this. And so whenever I think about it, I go from an observational perspective, where my past isn't, it bleeds into like a past life. It bleeds into just this continuum, this continuation of all experience, all that is, like all that ever has been up until it was not. That makes sense. Like the beginning of time, the beginning of creation, the beginning of, and the creation was just the splitting, the beginning of intelligence in a more, it's not true intelligence, turning into experience. Okay, I've talked about this in other videos, so that I'm just, it's bringing, just, you can look at those other videos, but that's essentially, it's like the beginning of time is the beginning of awareness, the loss of innocence, to have experience in order to appreciate or understand the wholeness of what we are. And so it's just like a trickle down effect, but it goes like that. Okay, so when I talk about like this feeling of like my life, okay, what it feels like from a higher perspective is that, like I said, like this laser focus, this narrow vision that enters into this reality. But this world is also like, it's like this suctioning. It's not necessarily suctioning. It's kind of like churning like this. It's churning like this energy that churns like this. And it just kind of brings it in. So it's like you, as your identity, comes into this world and it goes like that. And it's wide. It's wider than just the world. But it's like this, what we know of existence goes like that and brings us in. And so like I remember like a past lives, and then I remember also prior to this incarnation having connections on the other side and communication, not just with my guides that are here with me in this incarnation and that are beyond here, that are observing and are also doing what they're doing separately, but like on their paths, but are also working simultaneously for my life. And this identity is like with my soulmate and choosing where we're going, who we're going to become, and the possibilities of what that's going to look like. And so I just keep hearing like never lose hope, never lose hope. And I think that's a big message that I need to convey too, but that's also something that was part of my path, or like it's part of what I believe, right, is hopeful, never losing hope in self, never losing hope in others, never losing hope in the entire process of everything. This sounds so just, hopefully it's making sense. I feel like that's that did not come out the way that I was hoping it would come out, but that's the way it happened. I kind of want to just like, you know, in conclusion, there's a chariot jumped out. There's another card here that jumped, Knight of Swords. I literally accidentally just threw it. Miracles and blessings. In conclusion, okay, it's like I'm getting two different things. Like some of my lessons in life, of this life and understanding, when I point to this past life because I talked about before in other videos where I believe that in this past life, from what I've seen, is I was an addict. I was very selfish, and I felt so out of control in my life, and I had chosen to go down a dark path because I felt unforgivable, and I felt that things, it's like this cycle of self-abuse and thus abuse on others, where I was angry and spiteful about things that happened in my life, and I felt out of control, and then I would use or continue to use in order to suppress any potential guilt that I would have for things that I have done. And I would feel so out of control. I had no concept of time, you know, or no good concept of time, because I was always using. And I believe that I ended my life at the end of it. I believe I ended my life. I don't see like the details of it. I just see myself looking up, and I remember something to do with orange juice. Those are the only things I remember. And I don't really go deep into looking into it. This is just like what has come to me without me going deep into it, right? And I chose to go down this dark path because, you know, again, I just felt unforgivable. I felt unforgivable, and I felt like I was just masking pain, and using things that had happened to me, even if I was like from the beginning using that as ammunition to be that kind of selfish, greedy person and to use. And then when people would do something else to me, even if I was kind of should hold myself accountable for why I was in terrible situations or why people were treating me a certain way, I used that again as ammunition to continue down that path. And I would get so paranoid and stressed out, thinking, are these people who are sober that are around me talking bad about me? You know, like just saying how much of, like, I couldn't get it together. Like, who knows? I just felt so like lost, right? And I felt this from a very, very young, like I can't even say since I was born. I just always felt this because it's that continuation of this feeling, right? And so, yeah, and it playing out into this life. And I've had people who were part of that life reflect back into this life, and they had similar visions of this prior to me even acknowledging it. And so, yeah, anyway, so why am I bringing that up? Oh, because there's a simplicity to all of this, right? Where even the question of why, like, why am I, if this were true, right? Which I truly do believe that it is true. And even if it isn't, why do I feel this way? Like, what is it about these visions that's substantial for now? And it's, to me, highlighting forgiveness, because at our simplest form, we are love. At our truest form, we are love. We are loving beings. Our soul is pure. We don't want to harm others. We don't want to place harm on others. It comes from a place of narrow-mindedness. And so whether, again, whether good or bad, how we identify ourselves is from, if it's not from that, it is narrow. Love is the most expansive feeling. And to have forgiveness for someone, including yourself, means unconditional love, right? And it just, I don't know, that's basically it. It really taught me, as far as I can say, is number one, staying sober in this lifetime, because that was my journey. Like when I was a child, and I talked about the demon that I saw, it tried to convince me to go another way, which their promises, you know, the devil, demons, whatever, they will grant you immediate gratification in some form in order for you to feel in control, to feel satisfied, to feel entertained, whatever. But the long term doesn't remain that way. It's a lie. It's a lie, and it's not even permanent. So the promises that they were trying to grant me were a lie anyway. It would never become. But it's just me wanting, it's just, they just need the agreement on my end to go with them, to try to entertain that, and hopefully not feel, you know, like I need to retract, because oftentimes they'll take people and they will get them so far gone that they feel they're unforgivable. They feel like they've just done too much, that it doesn't even matter anymore, things like that. And so part of me knowing all of this has kept me on a straight and narrow path. Part of me knowing this has, because I've had many circumstances in my life where I could use that excuse. You know, I talked about my childhood, and I've been talked about some other instances growing up, and even up until now, of opportunities that I've had in order to harm others or just be a selfish person. And, you know, I'm not a perfect person by any means. You know, even growing up, I've made certain mistakes that aren't the most mature responses, but there was not anything that was intentional in the sense of spiritually going towards something dark and, you know, manipulating what it is that I feel I have an ability to do. And so I've followed the path that I believe that I'm supposed to be on, right? And it's really brought me to this deeper understanding of God and of love and of those pretty much those teachings, whether it's biblical or whatever religion. It all comes from the same source, the same God, right? So long as it's, I mean, you can tell, like, if you I mean, I don't really have to get into detail about that, you know, because religion, anyway, that's like, because like, basically, just to like clear what I'm even trying to say, is like, religion obviously is man-made, right? It's man's interpretation of something spiritual that has happened or has been transferred to man to interpret out, right? And there are obviously religions that are misinterpreting information. There are some religions that are formed in order to control society, but there's also religions that are in its purest form direct sources from God, right? These higher beings or incarnations of God, or ascended masters or whatever, that have come down in order to tell of these teachings, or intuitive people or whatever, that kind of help purify or curate those things, right? Those religious practices or whatever. But anyway, I don't know, whatever. What am I trying to say here? Just basically, that's what I had to say. Let's direct this towards you, okay? Let's direct this towards you now and see any specific thing. So we have forgiveness, leadership, illumination, and standstill here, and solitude. Okay. I think this kind of goes, it's kind of a journey, right? This is kind of that internal journey that I talk about, where, you know, you start with solitude, you start with that moving away from external kind of distractions and that stillness within you, right? It's kind of not really, it's like listening to your inner voice, listening to God, listening to where you feel driven to go, rather than being driven by your own desires, your own sense of wanting to control, your own, it's like asking it, you know, when people feel stressed, when people feel exhausted, when people feel some sort of overwhelm or lack, sometimes it's not about what do I need to do, what do I need to do, but what do I need to receive? And so it's taking that step back, taking that, releasing the reins, releasing the control, and saying, okay, God, show me the way. Show me what's next. Show me what I need to do. And accepting what it is that you're being guided towards, what you're being shown. Not setting an expectation of, that's not enough, I want to see more, or that's too much, I need to see less. What you see is meant to be shown to you for a specific reason, and you don't have to place so much pressure on yourself or your journey. That's it. You don't have to put so much pressure on yourself. You can now allow yourself to stand still, stay still, be still, and let the miracles come surround you. Let it come to you. Let the energy come to you. Let the guidance come to you, and take accountability and responsibility to follow through with it, no matter how big or small or challenging, right? Because we aren't gifted fear. We're gifted courage. We're gifted light. We're gifted love. And so if you're feeling fearful, if you're feeling stressed, you're feeling anxious, stand still, be still. That's not a product of God. That's a product of narrow-mindedness. It's a product of over-identifying with something that in essence is not in your control to begin with. Forgiveness we have here. So the path towards forgiveness is a path towards forgiving yourself for anything that you've done, whether you knew better or not, and taking that step towards saying, I'm going to be responsible here on out. It's the repentance, right? Repenting from something is acknowledging something from your past. This is a normal human behavior, right? Our human behavior is falter. It's going to falter because we are of this world. We're animalistic. And so the process of illumination, to be illuminated and live in illumination, is such a challenge. It's a human challenge. It's part of us being here, right? Where we have to combat against the worldly, it's like I don't know the word, like stigma or whatever. It's like we're trained, most of us are trained to identify with what it is that we see, right? Or It's like pursue the things here, right? Which are greed, you know, and that it's really about independence, right? It's independent, being independent, right? Do you get what I'm saying? When in truth, what we are is about community. What we are is about love for ourselves, love for each other, one another, helping one another. It's not about having the most of anything here, because if it were true about this past life, did I accumulate anything from that past life that I could carry forward into this life? No. Like tangibles, speaking tangibly, no. If we live this life, irregardless of whether you want to believe in anything spiritual or not, don't you want to live a good life, a helpful life, a kind life? Because when you're gone, what you just, do you want to waste your life, basically? Do you just want to waste your entire life just being hedonistic, basically, just like self-serving? For what reason? You know, like, it doesn't serve, it's empty. You're chasing something empty. It's not fulfilling. It'll never be fulfilling. And so it's looking for that deeper fulfillment, whether or not you want to be altruistic because you think it's going to get you into heaven, or you think that, you know, whatever. I don't know where I'm going with that. I lost my sense of thought because I was just thinking about going back to forgiveness and repentance. It's forgiving yourself for any prior decisions or mistakes or whatever, and truly making the commitment to move forward from that, to leave it completely behind, to completely change direction. And that's really what gets you into a more illuminated state, is release, leaving the past in the past. It's not carrying. And I think also with forgiveness, I'm seeing that in the same concept, you know, and that's unconditional love, right? When you unconditionally love someone, you forgive them. And it goes back to, you know, the broken hip situation, where in some form of carrying an identity that someone, for better or worse, has helped create you. Is that making sense? Then we have illumination, which I've touched on, and then we have leadership. And I feel like that's how you become a leader in life. That's how you become a leader in your own life, in your own path. That's how you truly take control. By taking control is you're releasing the reins. You're allowing spirit to guide you. You're allowing love to propel you forward in whatever way it's meant to happen. And accepting what it is that unfolds, right? And I'm hearing about the North Star. It's like allowing it's allowing yourself to follow something that is an internal guidance anyway. When you silence everything around you, that is intuitively what you're going to do, is follow the North Star. And so that's essentially what I'm seeing here, is the deeper that you allow yourself to address your shadows, it's like the darker it becomes, right? From forgiveness, it's the sun setting, and you have the moon to kind of reflect on, right? But then it gets into the leadership of here and the illumination here. I'm seeing this as like a Milky Way night sky type of thing. And so it's the deeper you fall into awareness of your truth. And your truth is everyone's truth. It's love. It's love. So, yeah. That's it, yo. Talk to you guys later. Bye.